Hello, everybody, and welcome to CFB Unfiltered. I am Blaine Gilmer here with Donovan White and Josh Taylor, and we are here to bring you some previews of the best games of the week with Oklahoma State facing Iowa State in a matchup where even though Oklahoma State is undefeated, the 8th-ranked team in the country, they're a 7-point underdog. And then, of course, we have the lowly Clemson Tigers this year trying to salvage a little bit of dignity with Kenny Pickett, the Heisman hopeful Kenny Pickett. Yes, the one that the commenter in the show last week said, the same Kenny Pickett that lost to Western Michigan. And I said, well, he can't play defense too. They gave up 44 points. So
I'm sure he could. He laid a shoulder last week.
He's a physical cat, man. He's a physical cat. But the 23rd ranked Pittsburgh Panthers going to face the Clemson Tigers. So we'll be previewing all those, but we're also going to be giving out our midseason awards as part of the Big Three. Hard to believe that college football is already halfway over here, Josh and Donovan. Not only do we have previews of those two games and, like I said, the midseason awards, but also as each and every week we give you our future headlines. We look ahead to what the papers and online will say after week 8 of college football action. Josh, what's that first one you got for us?
Yep, absolutely. We're going to stick right here with the Big Ten. Donovan, I know you're going to love this. Michigan takes care of business to set up a battle of undefeateds next week in East Lansing. The team that we thought was going to finish dead last in the Big Ten, Michigan State, looks like they're ready to put up a good fight. It's always a good one. I always think about the punt that was blocked and returned for the touchdown. And Sean, what's his last name? McGonaghy, the one that screeches all the time. He gets excited. That's one of my favorites all time. So I'm looking forward to this, but no trap game for Michigan. They're going to take care of business this week, and Michigan State has a bye. So a little extra week to get ready for Michigan.
Donovan, what do you like before we move on from that? We're going to preview a bunch of games. What do you like about that Michigan State team, and how have they gotten, as unlikely as it may be to this 7-0 mark?
I don't know what it is. The typical Michigan State Spartan team is like the crazy tough defense, right? And the offense is a decent running game, sometimes has a good quarterback. It's the script seems to flip through. They got a balanced offense. I want to see more out of their quarterback and their passing game, but they're led by Kenneth Walker III, who is arguably the best running back in the country. And it's just interesting to see the way that Spartan team has flipped, right, in this kind of culture revamp that they've had.
Yeah, and it's also interesting, too, because Mel Tucker is the former defensive coordinator at Georgia. He coached grad assistant under Nick Saban at Michigan State. He coached with Alabama at Alabama with Nick Saban when they were defensive priority. So it is strange to see Mel Tucker's name associated with, high-powered offense, but it is what it is. And in terms of that, guys, I guess that kind of fits with this whole college football season, right? Because you can't bet on anything. It is just absolutely a crapshoot when it comes to results each week. There's teams that we thought were going to be great, like Clemson, that are not. There's teams like we thought were going to struggle, like Michigan State, and they're 7-0. But if you still want to, even in this unpredictable college football season, if you want to bet on some things, guys, then you need to make sure you head over to Bet Online, guys, because we're back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of basketball season now, and more props and odds and lines than ever before. So Bet Online, it remains your number one spot for basketball and football this season. Head over to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo, which is BELIEVE50. That's BLEAV50 to receive your bonus from basketball, football, baseball, postseason, NFL, boxing, and UFC right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers for the 2021 season. Bet Online, it's the fastest and easiest way to bet all of your sports. Bet Online, it's where the game starts. And, Josh, when it comes to betting numbers and things like that, our first preview, like we mentioned, we're going to have a 7-point road underdog with Oklahoma State visiting Iowa State. That number just boggles my mind a little bit. And I think, in fact, that's one of our best bets here of the week, Josh. Am I right?
Yeah, and it's funny because last week we mentioned, Oklahoma State. We kind of had some concerns with them. We didn't really respect them as much. And sure enough, they take care of business with Texas. And you really look at an Iowa State team that struggled. Like, I know they've, lost some tough ones. Baylor's a good team. Iowa's obviously a good team, but you look at, Kansas State games, stuff like that, they still struggle. And on paper, they're one of the best teams in the Big 12. They just can't put it together. So I'm looking at a defensive team in Oklahoma State that's going to possibly hold them to, a good amount of points, like in the lower range. So I just think that point differential in itself, the value is outstanding for Oklahoma State. And it's not just because of the rankings and them being undefeated, nothing like that. But if you watch how they play games and how the betting trend seems to be for Oklahoma State, it's looking like that's where most of the money should be going this week, even if it's just the spread.
Absolutely. And so getting into the preview of that, and I know we're going to, we do a big three, and we'll get to our first set of big three after this preview, but I know that's part of a best bet, but I just wanted to go ahead and throw that number out there because Donovan, it seems like Oklahoma State is a team to me that started off with not much fanfare or anything like that. They struggled against the likes of Missouri State, against Tulsa, but then a road win against a Boise State team, and then Kansas State, Baylor, Texas, 4 really solid wins in a row, and they're starting to look better and better each week, in my opinion.
Yeah, they just keep winning, right? I mean, they find a way to win and kind of grit out those tough games. I'm interested to see how the team reacts after they have some success, right? And they are the 8th ranked team in the country. They're getting some national attention. I mean, you ranked them, 5th, I believe, after their win against Texas. I'm interested to see, how they react to that success compared to what their culture of we're the underdogs. We have the chip on our shoulder, which has been a healthy chip as of recent, but it can't be negative, right? That 7-point, spread that they're getting laid on, that should be motivation. And it's interesting to see, they're built to beat Iowa State, especially a struggling Iowa State team. They're built to stop the run. They're built to run the ball. It's a formula to beat Iowa State.
Yeah, and Iowa State has not been overly impressive in any facet of the game, really. I mean, against a very, very bad Kansas team, they did rack up 290 yards rushing, but they were consistently way up there in rushing yards last year with Breece Hall, and they were just absolutely dominating people. And that early on, Northern Iowa, they beat by 6 points, then they turn around and lose to Iowa by 10. Another loss to a Baylor team, which they just absolutely, I felt like they were out physicaled in that game, right? Baylor was more of the aggressor there, and that's typically not what you see under an Iowa State team with Matt Campbell. They have that tough, hard-nosed, mentality. But, Josh, I went back and watched every snap of the Oklahoma State and Texas game and the Oklahoma State and Baylor game, and I have just – after going back and kind of breaking down plays and looking what Mike Gundy is doing, particularly with an offense that I know is much maligned, and a lot of people say it's Jalen Warren or nothing. It's Jalen Warren, and it's that old Mike Gundy brain right in between his ears there, because he formations people to death. There's so much eye candy before the snap with motions and things like that. He's using personnel packages. He'll bring an extra lineman in to use as a tight end and have 2 other tight ends in there. One is a fullback, one is a tight end, using motion going across with the flank. I mean, it is crazy stuff, and I'm really, really excited to see what he throws out there against a good, well-coached team, that Matt Campbell defense.
Yeah, and the thing I'm really looking at is, like you mentioned, everything that Mike Gundy's been doing to help out the offense, and really just been helping out Spencer Sanders, who we've brought it up a couple times on the show. He's like that liability, that wild card. You don't know what you're going to get. We saw really good Spencer Sanders last year, and we also saw some really bad. And I think that trends kind of continued into the season. 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. You're like, that's not going to win you many games, but somehow they are undefeated. And I think it is because of Warren and that run offense, but also that defense of Oklahoma State. What I'm really looking at is Brock Purdy he hasn't really taken that next step that a guy like Kenny Pickett, who we're going to talk about, has this season. And that's one thing people are like, hey, Brock Purdy's coming back. Draft talk, people talk about him taking that next step going into his last season before he enters the draft. And it just hasn't happened. And I don't get it. With guys like Hutchinson and Charlie Kolar is one of the top tight ends in the country. You figure there'd be more production there, but it hasn't happened. He's efficient. I think he throws around like 74, 75% completion percentage. but still only 9 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. I've expected more this season, and it just hasn't popped. I'm just not sure what's going wrong with Brock Purdy and why he hasn't taken that next step.
Yeah, and Donovan, when you're talking about a defense in Oklahoma State that can hold a Steve Sarkisian coach team, I don't care who it is that Steve Sarkisian is coaching. If you can hold a Steve Sarkisian coach team to 317 total yards and 138 yards rushing, especially with Bijan Robinson at that running back position, I just feel like there's a lot of momentum there. And I know it's, a road game, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you my pick. I would tend to go with Oklahoma State in this game.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, Breece Hall has been getting his own, right? Even in Iowa State struggles, past 2 weeks especially. I believe it was like 197, 125, a couple touchdowns in both games against. I understand it's Kansas was one of them, but he's getting his own, right? And Bijan Robinson, even last week against Oklahoma State, got his own, even though Texas did not win. So I think Breece Hall is still going to get his own, right? It's just I don't know what's going on with the Iowa State offense, especially, right? Their defense, it hasn't been horrible, but again, we saw them against Iowa. We saw them against Northern Iowa. Haven't really seen them against consistent grinded out team, a consistent team like Oklahoma State has been. I tend to lean with you. I think Oklahoma State +7 is a great pick. I am, however, I'm going to pick Oklahoma State, but I'm waiting for them to lose a game this year because I feel like it's going to happen. So I think this game is going to be super close, like a 28-24, Oklahoma State. I think they cover, 28-27 even.
Is this a Purdue-Iowa type game here, that track fall game that's going to happen?
Not that bad. Iowa got embarrassed. Purdue, yeah. I get they're number 25 now. They're not the 25th best team in the country. But I think it's going to be a very close game. If Iowa State won, it wins probably. Only because I think Oklahoma State loses before they meet Oklahoma in the final game of the season this year.
Yeah, I think, with Oklahoma State, I like I said, I think they're going to win. I had a coach one time that said the true measure of greatness is consistency. Well, they're beating all these teams in the same consistent manner. So that formula is working for them. I'm going to hold with a similar score to what they've been putting up. I'm going to say Oklahoma State wins this game. I'm going to say 31-21. I think they have a little bit of separation in this one, and they're able to lean on Jaylen Warren late. And honestly, sometimes guys, you said that loss is coming. Don't worry, it's probably going to be coming the way Caleb Williams is playing. It's going to come when they play Oklahoma, because I watched Spencer Sanders throw the ball more this week. Like I said, I watched every play. Sometimes it looks like the dude's punting it out there to the guy. It's just so inaccurate. But if he can get a little bit more accuracy and they can hit some of those easy throws early on, I think they'll take care of Iowa State. But watch out for Oklahoma. Josh, what's your score prediction?
I feel like Iowa State, I jumped on the bandwagon before the season even started, and I jumped right off of it because they've been one of the biggest disappointments. So I feel like this would be one of the games where we're hoping Oklahoma State stays undefeated, this good story. Back to when – I remember when Oklahoma State was ranked, number 4. What year was that? 2009, something like that? I was like, man.
Brandon Whedon was there when they were number 2 in the country.
Yeah, it's just good. It was good seeing a team like that, up in the top, 4, top 5 of the country. So I like seeing these guys like Oklahoma State stay undefeated and, put their name out there in the playoffs. But I feel like this is the game that Iowa State's going to win because, they're not supposed to. They've been the biggest disappointment. We're expecting them to keep being disappointing, and they're going to just kind of ruin the party for Oklahoma State. But I will still pick Oklahoma State just because that defense is so good. I think it comes down to who's going to run the ball more and who's going to control it. You mentioned Warren versus Breece Hall. That's 2 really good running backs. To me, that's going to be what I'm watching. I'm watching a linebacker like Mike Rose for Iowa State. Can he stop Warren, close up that middle where Warren likes to run and just kind of take over the game? I don't think so. I think Oklahoma State, I'm thinking 31-24, Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and to your point, when we talk about controlling a running back, I think one big advantage before we move on to our next set of the big 3, I think, when you talk about Oklahoma State, they've got 4 defensive linemen up front that they rotate that I think are just they're big guys. I mean, ranging from 6'1", 320, more in Sionia C, more of a true nose guard, to a guy who, like Brandon Evers, who is a tweener, can come down and play the 3 technique, be more of a defensive end guy. He's 6'2", 295, but he's so active and just gets after it. Cody Waltersheed, Israel Antoine. I mean, they've got all those bodies that are very similar in size, and they just are relentless in getting after, and they're able to rotate them. So I like them to start to be able to stop the Iowa State run game, and I think if you do that, you take care of Iowa State. So now, guys, I know it didn't put our cool sound effect for the first part of the Big Three, but you can't leave it out for the show. So here we go, Big Three, set number 2.
Big Three. Yeah. Big Three.
And so our second headline, right, of our second set of the Big Three is this: the Big Ten Gauntlet begins next week. Can Ohio State survive any upsets? I think the answer is no, right? Again, you all know my bias with Ohio State fans. No, they can't survive an upset, and they shouldn't. I don't think any one-loss team at this point, no matter who they are, has the ability to survive another loss by any other team. I would assume you guys probably agree with that. I don't know, Josh, about you. If you can't agree with that as a Crimson Tide fan, who knows?
I do, just because, like you said, there's going to be so many one-loss teams that are going to throw the name out there, like Ohio State, Alabama, if it's one loss. If, Georgia loses in the SEC championship to Alabama, there's going to be so many. That second loss is, to me, even if it is Alabama, should just completely eliminate you from any kind of talks of the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see. There's a lot of really, really good teams in that Big Ten East. We talked about Michigan, Michigan State, both undefeated at this point, and then Penn State with only the one loss to Iowa at this point in time. We don't know their quarterback situation, of course. And Josh, you also have another best bet for us.
Yep, that's BYU -4.5 versus Washington State. BYU killed me last week against Baylor. I swore they were going to beat Baylor, and they didn't at all. Washington State going through some coaching changes. That's getting a little crazy over there with the vaccinations and everything for Washington. So it's just kind of catching not only Washington State at a bad timing, but I don't think Washington State is that good anyways. And I think BYU is better than what they've been showing. So to me, 4.5, I'm smashing that all day long. I would take it 5.5, 6.5. I think 7. I think this is like a 7 to 10 point victory for BYU. Great quarterback, good defense, and Washington State just not there right now.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that line's way too low. And one thing that we meant to do in the Big Three set 1 was start with some of our players of the year. So we'll go ahead and make up that. We're going to go rapid fire here. Offensive player of the year in terms of the mid-year point here. Donovan, who's your offensive player of the year for all of college football?
Kenneth Walker, the 30 is the best running back in football right now, I believe.
Oh, yeah, I believe so, too. Yeah, he's a large reason why Michigan State is undefeated. Josh?
Yeah, he's my Heisman vote. Of course, I have to say Bryce Young. I know y'all two weren't going to pick him. He's the Heisman leading candidate right now, but 156 for 244, 2,082 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. I don't put the Texas A&M loss on him at all. I expected certain, expectations from going into the season. I think he's, past that so far. So I'm going with Bryce Young, Alabama.
And I agree with Donovan. I think Kenneth Walker is, he's 3 yards shy of 1,000 through 7 games, and he's averaging 6.6 yards a carry, 9 touchdowns already. Like I said, he is a large reason why Michigan State can have confidence going into this just absolute murderer's row part of their schedule here. So I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker for offensive player. Let's go defensive player of the year through the midseason so far.
It's Jordan Davis for me. He's a dominant force in the middle, and it's been a while since we've seen, guys like we saw Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne in the SEC not too long ago, but Jordan Davis is a monster.
I told you I was going to pick Will Anderson, but I'm going to switch it just so there's not too much Alabama bias, even though Will Anderson has 7 sacks on the season. I'm going to go Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati. To me, he is exactly what everyone thought Derek Stingley Jr. was going to be this season. The guy is a lockdown corner. You can't throw his way. Him and Kobe Bryant, like I said, the 2 best names in college football. But to me, that guy is physical. He can hit you hard. He's a ball hawk. I love Sauce Gardner, and his draft stock is way high right now.
I'm going to go with Nakobe Dean because he's the quarterback of that Georgia defense. He plays the most snaps, actually, of anybody on that Georgia defense, other than a member of the secondary, of course. But in that front seven, they rotate those guys a lot. That's the calling card of Georgia. Well, Nakobe Dean's out there, right? And he's the signal caller. He's running from sideline to sideline. Made a great pick against Auburn. And I just think as Nakobe Dean goes, similar with Jordan Davis, you could say Jordan Davis in that defense, but as Nakobe Dean goes, that Georgia defense is going to go, because if you go back and look at a play against Kentucky, they had a wide open screen pass if he doesn't weave his way through 3 defenders and go in there and just blow it up. So Nakobe Dean, Defensive Player of the Year. And real quick, let's go to Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I'm going Mike Gundy. I think Oklahoma State has been rolling, right? They've been that team that we thought could be good, but has come out of nowhere in that top 10 ranking at least. He's my Coach of the Year at this point.
I'm going to go Coach out. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to go, even though they have 3 losses, I'm going Sam Pittman out of Arkansas, because I remember, SEC media days leading up to the season, everyone was like making fun of that hire. Everyone's like, oh gosh, like Arkansas got it wrong again. And Sam Pittman, I hear the players talk about him. I hear like how behind they are. That's something that's shown through their play. Like, this team is much better than what we expected. Not only just beating Texas, but just the more I hear them talk about Coach, he's the kind of guy you want to play for. So I think he's building up that culture for Arkansas, not just on the field, but off of it. Kind of reminds me of like Coach O. Like he feels like an Arkansas type head coach over there. So I'm going Pittman. I think they win more games. They're going to make the bowl. I think they're going to win that out, and they're building something good over there in Arkansas.
Yeah, the difference with Pittman, he's been happily married for many, many years. So there's no issues with that. But
he doesn't have girls at practice, does he?
No, that's not an issue with Coach Sam. But I'm going to go with Mark Stoops at Kentucky, because just to get Kentucky to the point where they were on the precipice of getting to the top 10, and quite honestly, they did things that gave Georgia trouble that other people have not done. I mean, and he's done a good job of utilizing the transfer portal, going out and getting a Wan'Dale Robinson and Will Levis, and guys that have really changed the trajectory of that program. They're actually in it now with 4- and 5-star, receivers and offensive tackles and things like that. So the recruiting trail's getting hot. I'm going to go with Mark Stoops. And our last one before we do our Pittsburgh and Clemson preview here, we're going to say our freshman of the year.
Yep. Mine is Travion Henderson. I mean, he's averaging a first down every time he touches the ball. And this is, again, you're going to hear this with bias to it, but I'm telling you, when it's all said and done this season, there's going to be an argument, if he stays healthy, that he was the best running back in college football this year.
I'm going to go Caleb Williams, which might be kind of a hot take, just because to me, he is saving Oklahoma's season right now. He is saving that offense. Like, it looked like they were just squeaking by every single week. Sooner or later, they were going to lose a game, and Caleb Williams just comes in. That offense is electric. The fan base is back in it. You mentioned it last week, Blaine. You thought, Oklahoma with Spencer Rattler was like bottom 10, top 10 team, and now they're a top 5 team just because of what Caleb Williams is doing. So I think right now, and also looking for what he's going to finish the season, like, I think Caleb Williams is the guy.
Oh, yeah, and I think if this were an end-of-the-season award, I would probably end up giving it to Caleb Williams, right? Because I think by the end of that time, but just because he's only played 6 quarters at this point, that was who I was going to go with. But I thought, he just hadn't put the body of work together yet. I'm going to go with Brock Bowers at Georgia. He's got 416 receiving yards for Georgia. He's their leading receiver, has the most receptions, has the most touchdown catches for Georgia. And quite honestly, guys, he is only, if you look at his stats right now, with 416 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns, he's 300 yards and I think 5 touchdowns away from what Kyle Pitts did last year for Florida. So, I mean, and Georgia's going to keep feeding this guy the ball. He's their best receiver right now. He runs a true 4.5 40. He's 6'4", 235 pounds, has NFL talent written all over him. So I'm going to go with Brock Bowers as freshman of the year. So that is most of our preseason awards. We're going to have 2 more in our next set of Big Three, but then we're going to talk real quickly about Pittsburgh and Clemson and Kenny Pickett traveling to the Tigers and to Clemson, and Clemson just trying to salvage, like I said, some dignity here in this season, as they've already, just lost most hopes of every goal that they had so far. So, Josh, what do you think when you what's the line on this game, and what do you think about it going into Pittsburgh versus Clemson?
So the line is Pitt right now. It's bounced around a little bit, but right now it's Pitt -3.5. And I like that. That half a point kind of bugs me. Like you really wish it was 2.5, just because Clemson has a phenomenal defense. But this is a game I can't wait to watch, just because everyone over here in Washington's, clamoring about Kenny Pickett. Like, we need a quarterback, and this has been the hottest guy all season long. Like, Sam Howell struggled. Spencer Rattler obviously doesn't exist anymore. And Desmond Ridder, there's concerns with passing. And it seems like Kenny Pickett is like the unanimous, like, safe bet in the draft. So I think this is a perfect test, not only like come April when you're watching tapes, you're like, all right, what did he do against Clemson? But just showing that, like, hey, I didn't come back for the NIL. I didn't come back to win the Heisman. Like, I came back to win some games, take some names, open up a can, you know what, on a team like Clemson. And I think he's going to play a great game. But I don't know, if you're looking at it just betting wise, 3.5 really bugs me. I would probably stay away from Pitt -3.5, just because that half a point.
Yeah, I think Pitt's going to end up winning the game. What I'm curious about is, and correct me, either one of you, if I'm wrong, I think this is the first time Clemson's been the underdog this season and in a decent little while. I'm curious to see, other than against Georgia.
No,
yeah.
It was like 1 point, or like, it wasn't much, though.
It wasn't much, but this
depending
is
on where you got it, it was between 1.5 and 3, depending.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious to see. Obviously, Clemson's offense is putrid. Their offensive line sucks. DJ is not a great quarterback. He's not ready yet. Justin Ross is their only bright spot on that team, and it's a shame for him. I'm curious to see now with that kind of flipped mindset of, oh, we're the underdogs. Does that do anything for Clemson, or are they just kind of throwing the towel for the season? Because like they can light a fire, but does that matter against an NFL caliber quarterback, high round pick Kenny Pickett? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to do much. I think they're kind of shot for this season mentally.
The thing that bothers me is Clemson, like you said, Clemson's offense is just so bad. Justin Ross has been on and off the field, like with injuries. Like, I don't know if it's like the back or what all has been going on with them. That was a big question mark going into the season. And then Joseph Ngata is the leading receiver. And like after that, it's a huge drop in production. Like, there's nothing else. And then the run game, you got Kobe Pace and Will Shipley. And it's just like, this isn't Travis Etienne at all. Like, they're missing that big time. They can't get a run game going to help out DJ. And it's showing. It's just like short drives and just really boring. Not that Clemson offense with, Trevor Lawrence throwing it deep to Amari Rodgers or Colin Powell like every play. Like, they're missing so much in offense, and it's just concerning that they haven't figured like a way to fix it yet. And Pitt's got a pretty good defense. Like, they're hit or miss. They either allow a lot of points or they like lock you down for the game. So to me, like, which Pitt defense shows up, and then can Kenny Pickett score enough points on a very stout Clemson defense, which is the only reason why they've, actually won games this season.
Well, let's say this, when it comes to Pittsburgh's defense, they went to Knoxville and played Tennessee earlier this year, won that game. And we all know now that Josh Heupel and Tyon Evans and that Tennessee team, they run the ball well. Like, if Josh, obviously Alabama's a heavily favorite, but if there's only one thing that Alabama should be concerned about in that game is, will their run defense, hold down Tennessee from just extending some drives, and eating up some clock and letting them hang around, that kind of thing. They're a very good rushing team, and Pittsburgh held Tennessee to under 100 yards rushing, right? Pittsburgh's only allowing 319. They're averaging allowing 319 yards of total defense a game. Clemson's only averaging 325 yards of offense a game, and that's against teams like, listen to these teams. Obviously, Georgia held them out, and that skews the numbers some, but South Carolina State, Georgia Tech, North Carolina State, Boston College, Syracuse, not exactly just overwhelming powerhouses, and they have not been able to move the ball a lick. I think that Pittsburgh has an opportunity to, if they can get a rhythm going early with Kenny Pickett and both of his gloves on, which I really like out of him. I think
that's kind of weird.
Something about it I like. He's wearing 2 gloves, slinging the ball around. So, when it comes to Kenny Pickett, if they can get some momentum early, I like them to be able to hold down that Clemson offense, not just, to 20-something points or maybe 30 points. I think they are able to hold them down tremendously. So I think that it's going to be low scoring on Clemson's part, and I like Pittsburgh to win this game. I'm going to say that obviously the Clemson defense is a little bit of a factor here, so I'm gonna like them to win this game 27-13 Pittsburgh.
Ooh, wow. I mean, I love Pittsburgh, and that's way too much for me. I'm leaning 24-23 Pittsburgh. For me, Kenny Pickett, he's just been carving it up this season, and he's been taking care of the ball. 1,934 passing yards, 21 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. And like you said earlier, he's not afraid to lower that shoulder when he's near the goal line. Like, he'll run a couple of draws. Not a lot. Like, he's not a running guy. But, by no means is he going to just kind of fold in the pocket. And for me, like, he spreads the field. It's not like he just, like, goes to one side. I see him throwing to Jordan Addison, who's the leading receiver, who has 586 yards and 9 touchdowns. By the way, that's more than Clemson's entire offense. And then they have big old wide receiver Jared Wayne, who he loves in the red zone. 315 yards, 21 catches. He's like a sure hand, strong-handed guy. And then a giant tight end, 6'6", 260, Lucas Krull, 211 yards and 5 touchdowns. Another big red zone guy. So Clemson's defense is phenomenal. They're going to give him fits. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Kenny Pickett kind of struggles a little bit, but he can spread the ball out to multiple weapons. So I like Kenny Pickett to win this one. Like I said, I think it's going to be like 24-23 or like 24-21. It's going to be really close, though.
Yeah, give me Pitt 24-16. I think Clemson's scoring is that bad that they're going to miss an extra point to make it 16 points instead of 17. Again, Clemson, I just think they're shot for the year. I don't even care if their defense comes ready to play. This is the best quarterback they're going to face all season. Most likely. I mean, maybe Sam Howell, you can make an argument once that day comes. But I don't see them having any sort of bounce back game, even if they do, play up a level than they have this season. I still think Pitt takes care of business.
And so we all like Oklahoma State earlier. We all like Pitt right now. Watch both of them lose because of that. Did we just jinx them with the unanimous picks?
I hope not. I like Pitt a lot. They're so much fun. And they have really sweet unis too. Like, I don't know about like the weird blue and yellow combo. I don't know. I like it.
But with that, let's end up with our last section of our last sec. But with it, yeah, ha. But with that, let's end up with our last set of the Big Three.
Big Three. Yeah. Big Three.
And with that, we have another headline for you that we predict will be out there after Week 8. Another ranked team falls for the ACC as Army knocks off Wake Forest. Wake Forest is like the last glimmer of hope for the ACC. Can they run the table, be the improbable, fly in the ointment to the college football playoff system? And we're saying it all shatters with Army taking them down.
Yeah, there's a reason the line, I think, is Army +3. Vegas is trying to tell us something here. Let's listen to them like we, normally usually should.
Vegas always knows. It makes me so mad. Like, I don't know how they know, but they do.
Absolutely. And then our best bet here is Ole Miss versus LSU. The over-under is 75.5. We're taking the under on this one because that's just an astronomical number, and weird things happen with a LSU interim coached by Ed Orgeron team.
Yeah, maybe LSU actually plays some defense this season. Same with Ole Miss. It just feels like those games that you think are going to be like huge blowouts in the SEC, they aren't. And then the ones that you think are going to be low scoring, like Ole Miss and Arkansas, turn out to be like 80-80. You're like, what the heck? So,
last week with Ole Miss and Tennessee, everybody, the over-under was 82. And I was thought, well, yeah, it'll probably be over that. I mean, it's going to absolutely be just, a scoring fest. And I think it ended up being like 50-something, like 57 total. So, and Matt Corral's banged up this week. So that definitely factor in. I think he'll play. I think that's a smoke screen, like Ed O said about Lane Kiffin. I think he'll play, but definitely banged up. So he may not be 100%. But with that, let's get to our biggest surprise team of the year midway through the season. Donovan, who you got?
It's not so much that I'm surprised at what they're doing. It's surprised at where the AP voters have them at, and that's Cincinnati. I mean, honestly, I'm surprised that right now in the AP Top 25, they are ranked number 2 in the country, because I didn't think they would have that respect behind their name. I know they did really well last year, and they're doing well this year, but they're the biggest surprise. I mean, it's crazy to think that UC is number 2.
Josh?
For me, we've talked about them a lot. It's Michigan State. I mean, we made fun of them. I kind of feel bad now. Like the first one we gave out our rankings and our predictions for the season. But I watch a quarterback like Peyton Thorne, Jaden Reed at wide receiver, and of course Kenneth Walker III, who is our favorite running back in college football, hands down. They've made it fun to watch, and like we're used to this hard-nosed defense, just really boring Michigan State games. It's usually terrible. Outside of like Kirk Cousins and Le'Veon Bell days like back then, but it's just usually such a boring game. Now they've made it fun to watch. So they've been the biggest prize. I have to give respect because we dogged them way too much before the season started, and maybe they can stay on the field a little bit longer and throw some little chaos at the end late.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with another team we've already talked about a lot here, Oklahoma State. I think that they're, the consistency that they've shown with inconsistency at the quarterback play, the fact that they've been able to overcome that. Sanders is just, like I said, the accuracy is just not there at times. Sometimes he will fit a ball into a window with 3 guys converging and it looks great. And then other times, like I said, it literally looks like he's thrown it with the wrong hand or punted it towards the receiver. So it just goes crazy. And if he's done this one time in a game where he puts both hands on his head and look, he does it 5 times a game. Like he's like, I can't believe it was that bad, badly thrown or something like that. So, the fact that they've been able to overcome that, I think Mike Gundy has done a great job coaching this football team. Now, Donovan, worst disappointment of the season midway.
I think it's Spencer Rattler, right? We've all seen those Twitter clips from high school, right? I thought he was going to fizzle out in the NFL, right? That just seems like that's kind of teammate and athlete he is, and he's one of the worst kinds, in my opinion, if you ask me. But it happened a little quicker. He's my biggest disappointment. The so-called Heisman Trophy winner this season and number 1 overall pick is neither. About to be a transfer.
I don't want to put it on one guy, so I'm going to say Clemson. Like, I could obviously say DJ Uiagalelei just because we thought he was like the next Trevor Lawrence. Like, people
you really need to put it on the 5 guys in front of him.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Or the head coach going into the living room saying, "Come to Clemson, I'll develop you," and he's not. So maybe I can put it on Dabo, but just Clemson in general, they've shown that they can't reload and keep going like Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State can. Lose guys. I knew you were waiting for me to say Ohio State.
You guys like to throw in the elite teams like Alabama, Georgia.
Yeah, I just tagged you on the backside. But Clemson just showing they can't keep up year in, year out. They don't recruit well. We've talked about that a lot. And now they're kind of like looking silly. Like, hey, maybe you shouldn't be so selective on your recruiting style, Dabo.
Yeah, no doubt. And then I'm going to go with North Carolina because I picked North Carolina. Honestly, I thought they would win the ACC over Clemson this year. I mean, they had Sam Howell that everybody was talking about being the, maybe even the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. He was that kind of talent and, just totally laid an egg there at Virginia Tech and have since lost to the likes of Florida State. I mean, it is a rough year, and everything was set up for him, guys. Clemson was down, and they were going to be able to if they were decent at all, they were going to be able to be in a position to, not only make it to the conference championship game, but win the conference championship. And that's just all out of hand now. Mac Brown was doing a great job on the recruiting trail. That's even cooled off some now for those guys.
They got 5-star offensive tackle Zach Rice tonight over Ohio State, Alabama, Notre Dame, and Virginia. So I really wanted him. They could have used him this year, though.
That is a big pickup then for him. I mean, he must not care about them being terrible this year.
He
So
just wants them Jordans.
yeah, so he just wants to wear that Jordan brand. I don't know, but North Carolina is my disappointment this year. And then finally, real quick here before then, let's talk about Heisman. I'll just run through the contenders real quick. Really, it's kind of come down to the point where it's Bryce Young, Matt Corral, Kenneth Walker III, and CJ Stroud. And guys, I think it's just all going to depend on it. As silly as it sounds, is how does their defensive sides of the ball for each one of those teams perform for them? Because I think all those guys are going to put up numbers, but as well as I do, unless you're Lamar Jackson a couple years ago who just absolutely video gamed his way to the Heisman, these voters take into account your team performance a lot as well.
Yeah, and if say Pitt beats Clemson and they still only have one loss, like
Kenny
we
Pickett
talked
should
about,
be in that conversation.
I think he could jump CJ Stroud. If we're only picking 4, I think he should jump CJ Stroud next week in our top 4.
Yeah, I think you're gonna see someone like Matt Corral, right, where Ole Miss defense might have some games where they struggle more so than Alabama's or Ohio State's or even Michigan State's or Pitt. You could see that kind of being the thing that just pulls, maybe Bryce Young or Kenny Pickett even just a step away from him. Because like you mentioned, Blaine, voters look at that and they see that for whatever reason, even though it shouldn't affect, the player itself, it does.
Yeah, no doubt. And, of course, Jordan Davis should be mentioned in the Heisman candidacy, but, a lot of people won't get on that because he's a defensive player. But, he was your defensive player of the year there, Donovan. So at least we get that record or midway through the season here.
Donovan's
so
not a voter.
Yeah, Donovan with his Heisman vote over there. No, but anyways, guys, we appreciate you for joining here on CFB Unfiltered. We will be back on Sunday night live here on the 365 Sports YouTube channel, and then airing on the Believe Podcast Network as well. Anywhere you listen, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Make sure to give us a like on here, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. We really appreciate it. And for Josh Taylor and Donovan White, I am Blaine Gilmer, and we will catch you next time on CFB Unfiltered.